Hey everyone, we're the Good Doctors of Abbey Research. I'm Dr. Donnelly.
And I'm Dr. Hinson.
And we are here to talk to you today about the Netflix documentary. Is a little bit shallow for this particular piece of work.
That's not just quite the right word for it, is it?
This Netflix explosion called Abducted in Plain Sight. So we will admit that we were not planning on covering this until a couple of our very wonderful and loyal viewers recommended and asked for it.
On the basis of, I believe, our coverage of The Keepers.
Yes. So thank you.
Thank you with an asterisk.
Yeah, maybe. Whoops, let me just hit do not disturb there. So we're an Abbey Research HQ, which means we're also in the parent company. So the phones are a-ringing.
The phones are ringing. We are open for business.
So for those of you guys who haven't encountered this story, quick summary. In the 70s,
1974,
there lived a family called the Brobergs.
Yep.
Who lived next door or around the corner or very
Near
close
enough, yeah.
to a family called the Birchtolds.
Uh-huh.
And the Birchtold patriarch was, until his death, a serial pedophile who systematically isolated the middle daughter.
Oldest daughter?
Oldest
I'm
daughter,
not sure.
Jan Broberg, and abducted her once. And the tagline for this show is that she got abducted twice. And we're not comfortable saying that she was abducted the second time, because that word doesn't fit what happened the first time. So something else happened the second time. She
ran away the second time, but totally under
the brainwashed
influence of Birchtold. So, and the first time was just a straight up abduction.
He convinced her family to let him take her to see horses, gave her an allergy pill that was instead a sleeping pill, and drove from Utah to Mexico to marry a 12-year-old girl.
And this is the part that I feel, because Dr. Donnelly read a little bit more about this before we watched it, but even she didn't get this spoiler.
We were not prepared.
So, there's an alien component to this one, as in alien abductions.
So what Birch
not a real one, but
yeah, we're not here to tell you that we believe the truth is out there. So Birchtold was incredibly thorough.
Very thorough.
And part of the abduction bit was that he recorded a story on a tape recorder, and it sounds like Jan had also never seen a tape recorder, which kind of, I don't know when tape recorders were invented.
Me neither.
But that looked like an old school answering machine.
Yeah.
And she just kept saying the white box was talking. And I was like, okay, did you not know what this was? Anyway, the story of the fact that she was abducted by aliens. Remember too, she's 12.
Oh, and she's Mormon.
She's isolated. Not isolated creepily, but the family lived they all say it, the world was kind of small then. And so it wasn't she had exposure to the stories on the same level that we all have now. You knew stranger danger, but not at this level.
Yeah, it struck me at the beginning very In Cold Blood-esque start, where everyone was talking about how friendly the neighborhood was and how they never locked their doors and everybody knew everybody and everybody felt this inherent safeness. So I feel it was close to that, and then so that was part of her mindset as well. She just trusted people that her parents trusted, which is most of our childhoods.
Yeah. So the aliens told her that she was a chosen one, and that in order to save humanity, she had to get pregnant by the man they chose for her, who, lo and behold, is Birchtold.
Whoa, yeah.
Shocker.
Who saw that coming?
And so she eventually is found, but
she's just coerced into a sexual relationship with him.
Yeah.
Because of the alien tapes.
Yeah.
And this is all brilliantly constructed, and I mean that in a sincere and also horrifying way.
He was probably a genius on some level.
That this like allowed him to be the good guy.
Yeah.
So,
and he was also the only one who knew, because of course she couldn't tell anybody, because then of course everybody would die.
Yeah, all of the things that go into an abuser and a victim relationship, where you isolate them, where you convince them that they can't tell anyone, where you scare them so that they can't tell anyone,
threaten their family,
like all of this, instead of him being the person that did that,
the aliens did.
So which allowed her to form a real and sincere like attachment to him. It was like brilliant and also sickening.
So then, you know, eventually they're found. Her parents bring her back. There's whole components as to what he did to her parents that we're not going to get into in this, but know that we are not in the camp that blame the Brobergs for what happened to Jan. Because this was a monster. Berchtold was a monster
who manipulated
master manipulator.
All of them.
But they all talk about how she was a different person. It was really interesting to us that they were, her sisters especially, were very clear that the girl who came back from Mexico was not Jan. So Jan eventually runs away again because she has to be with B, because he has convinced her that not only with the aliens, but also
kill her whole family.
They'll kill her whole family, but also like she loves him. He has convinced her and brainwashed her. So they're gone. She's gone for a really long time.
Like 90 days.
90 days.
A very long time.
And there's all stuff in this about like if they had acted differently with the FBI, if they had done all of this. But as we are not experts in any topic that is covered here, but we know enough to know that nothing really surprised us in how the Brobergs behaved. Because of the decisions and the manipulation that Berchtold executed perfectly. So the happy ending for this, I was personally very, very thankful that the filmmakers chose to introduce us to adult Jan very quickly. So like adult Jan was telling us her story. And so it's a little bit like that show I Survived, where you're like, there's no way, this is a terrible story, but the person who survived it is telling you the story. I was very grateful for that. I was not grateful for the reenactments. Reenactments always get a big from us. We're not fans of reenactments. It wasn't necessary to advance the story, and it added a creep factor that was already there that didn't need to be exploited.
Like they did a good enough job portraying how disgusting Berchtold was, just with the narratives and like the photographs
and the tapes they played of him speaking.
Oh, the creepiest tapes you've ever heard in your life. That was enough. I feel like I understood him enough, and the reenactments were not needed. Like we couldn't watch them. It was cringe factor 1,000.
1,000.
Not good.
So anyway, she eventually comes back to her family, and through very clearly a epic amount of therapy, both individual and on behalf of the entire family, they sewed their life back together
amazingly.
You will be shocked, I know, to understand that he never really went to prison for his crimes. It was like a year.
I think 54. He pled to a reduced sentence of 45 days for abducting Jan.
The first time,
and served 10 days because of good behavior.
And then like later on in life, like fast forward to the 90s, he was arrested for something else.
For rape.
Yeah.
He was arrested for rape and served a year, I think.
Yeah. So
for raping a child.
Felt really good about the American justice system during this.
Spends the most of his life out of jail.
Also spends the rest, she eventually publishes a book of her story with her mother, and then he decides to stalk and harass her. If you watch nothing else, fast forward to, I want to say 20 to 30 minutes left and watch her take him down.
Oh, it's amazing.
She is a queen.
Yeah.
Big fans of Jan Broberg right here.
She's a new hero of ours. Yeah. So if anything, it introduced us to
this incredible survivor.
The heroism of Jan Broberg. Yeah. And her family.
And we're, and I'm sure that some of the questions we're going to get is, and because we already did, and some of the requests to cover this was about the religion aspect. And here's what I would like to tell you. I'm not an expert in Mormonism. I certainly understand basics, and I dabble, and I can sing the entire cast recording of the Book of Mormon. But what I do know is that it is a very patriarchal religious system. And therefore, when he was reported, the Brobergs were Mormon, I would assume still are, and Berchtold was active in the local temple as well. We're told that the LDS Church was informed that he was being abusive and disgusting, and their response, of course, was to really do nothing.
There was a weird therapist at the beginning.
Yeah, there's like a tribunal type of thing, but like he wasn't He wasn't completely excommunicated.
No.
And even if he was functionally, they did not report him to the police. A couple things before we start demonizing the Mormons. Nobody was reporting anybody to the police in the 70s. Church is not reporting. We in the United States do not classify volunteers in church services as mandatory reporters. So even if you are in a state where the pastor of a church or paid staff is a mandatory reporter, deacons are not mandatory reporters, elders are not mandatory reporters. There is a lot of problems here. So let's not demonize the LDS Church for their actions in this way. It was terrible. They totally sucked. But again, so did everybody else, and we all have a long way to go. So let's just say we all have a long way to go to protect children. The other element is that there is an alien element in some Mormon theology.
Which I totally forgot.
There is, and the degree to which it was taught, from my understanding, please correct me if I'm wrong, was largely determined by like which pastor oversaw your particular temple, how long you had been part of the LDS Church, how much, in the same way that there's pieces of Orthodox Christianity that I don't ascribe to, in the same way, like Mormons are not all brainwashed to all believe the exact same things that you saw in South Park. Like that's not quite how it works.
Yeah,
so,
and we don't, like Jan does not
connect the dots for us.
Yeah, so she doesn't say like, of course I believed the alien story because of my faith. So she doesn't say that. And I had forgotten there was that component, little that I know, even littler than what Dr. Donnelly knows about it. But to me, it made a lot of sense just that when you're that young, you're susceptible to that kind of persuasion.
And the 70s were aliens a go-go. Like, yeah, I mean, so there's a couple different elements of this.
And she doesn't make that connection, but it's possible that it could have been part of her theology. We don't know.
She could have heard it in a Sunday school class, and so it didn't sound as far-fetched as it would to a child in 2019.
Maybe, yeah.
So there's a lot of elements of this. The filmmaker intentionally chose to not unpack their particular Mormonism and the intersection of their faith in this abduction. I listened to
an interview. Which is fine. It would have been too much if they did.
Would have been too much. Listen to an interview with the filmmaker on Sarah D. Bunting's podcast, The Blotter Presents, which we'll link to in the show notes if you want to hear the filmmaker talk more about this. But essentially, it's just what Dr. Hinson just said. It would have been too much. And she didn't feel like she was an expert. And she thought the story really was about the triumph of Jan Broberg.
Yeah.
And that's the story she wanted to tell. And I, even as a religion scholar, am more interested in that. I am good on patriarchal institutions abusing children.
Yeah, I think we understand how that works.
Like, I accept that. That's a reality. I spend a lot of hobby time doing research into that element. I'm much more here for stories of triumph and personal healing, which is what this was.
Mm-hmm. There were some really beautiful scenes with her parents.
God, her dad broke me.
Oh my God, her parents broke me. But also in talking about forgiveness.
Yep.
How
her sister's talking about it too. Yeah.
How they all learned to forgive their parents for trusting this man and for, maybe not going to the police sooner. And that's the story we want to hear, right? It's the power of forgiveness and change and healing. And if they want to do another documentary about the religious aspect of it,
we'll watch it.
We'll watch it. Yeah. But it wasn't necessary to telling this story.
No. And also I leave convinced of a couple things. One is the incredible power of therapy, the incredible power of open and vulnerable communication. This family has clearly already had a foundation of open communication that the therapy was able to just say, be honest, there's no need to hide from each other anymore. What he did was hide you from each other.
Yeah.
So freedom from this comes in communication. And my family has been through family therapy, not for anything catastrophic or terrible. We needed to learn to talk to each other. And that was an incredible gift as my sibling and I entered adulthood, was learning how to communicate. And I advocate for it constantly for every family because it's an incredible gift. And also that we have no idea how complicated people's lives are. And there are so many stories that are left untold and so many, I think growing up watching like Law and Order on television, I assumed all crimes get solved.
Yeah, everybody does.
And
I think
I've quite fallen into a true crime rabbit hole in the last couple of years, thanks to My Favorite Murder, another podcast that I love, but I am constantly amazed at both the human capacity for monsterhood and the human capacity for forgiveness and healing and overcoming and empowerment and all those other things. And this story drove that home again. If I sat next to Jan Broberg in a movie theater, I would have no idea.
No, you wouldn't.
And so I wonder how many other stories people are carrying.
Everybody has a story
that we need to create
stories.
Better space for to empathetically listen and understand. So those are my main takeaways. I think we've talked enough that those are largely yours as well.
I was about to say, I don't have anything else to add to that.
So that's it from us for now. We'll see you next time with another thing you should watch on the internet. Before we get to Handmaid's Tale. Eventually.
Sometime later this summer.
The meantime, I'm Dr. Donnelly.
I'm Dr. Hinson.
We're the Good Doctors of Abbey Research, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.